Okay, Patty, I believe I have everyone. I have not heard from Rusty to see if he was going to be joining the meeting.
Okay, I emailed him earlier today and I did not get a response either.
Okay. And now I have 6:01, so if he's able to join, then he'll be able to join, and maybe he'll join later.
Okay.
At this point, if we could all stand for Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, Richard Beltz, Rita Spinelli, Nathan Foeller,
Present.
Patricia Denicola,
Present.
Tina Champ,
Present.
Jonathan Kleber,
Present.
Okay, now that roll has been recorded, we'll get started. The first item on the agenda is the annual financial report. This is the 2018-19 annual financial report. This goes in correlation with the 2018-19 independent audit that was completed. That will be shared with the board, hopefully at the June board meeting. Due to the coronavirus epidemic and our auditors being within Montgomery County, they were hit hardest and delayed most in their work. So there was a delay in receiving our audit report. I have received the draft report from the audit firm. They have not released that publicly yet, so they will be releasing that shortly. I reviewed the audit report. It's in line with our AFR, which has been reported to the state. The AFRs have also been placed on the district website. I placed the 2018-19 and a few prior years were also placed on the website for people to print and view. The 2018-19 year finished at total revenue of $42,125,217 against total expenses of $43,901,734. That's a loss of $1,776,517. Included within the revenue for 2018-19 were two items that are one-time revenue sources that will not continue in the future. The one was the sale of buildings for a total of $702,055. The second one was PlanCon subsidy reimbursements from prior years that should have been received by the district in prior years. We were able to get those all caught up at the end of the 18-19 year, and we received upwards of $1 million. So if those two items had not been received, the loss would have actually been $3,478,572. The budgeted expenditures for 2018-19 were $40,694,461. So the actual expenditures of $43,901,735 are actually about $3.2 million over what was budgeted. The main items, special programs such as special ed, was one of the things that looks like, was under budgeted. There was a number of different items, expenditures for capital outlays for, fixing buildings and things. That was also, did not appear to be budgeted appropriately based upon what was spent. And again, the auditors will share, hopefully at a very near board meeting, the entire audit report with the board, and we will provide copies of that audit report when we have it from the audit firm to share with everyone. The second item on the agenda is, and JJ, if you could pull up the St. Luke's. Yep. Currently, our athletic trainer is Lehigh Valley Health Network. The athletic training fees are $55,250 annually. They also provide district physician services as required by school code. The stipend for that is $6,000 annually to the physician, and they charge $7 for each physical that they need to perform on one of our students. Over the past few months, St. Luke's has reached out to us with a proposal in regards to becoming the school district's athletic trainer and more. In their proposal, the athletic training fees are $0 and the district physician services and physicals are also $0. St. Luke's has also proposed to offer one additional athletic trainer to our agreement, and also provide district11sports.com streaming equipment, along with Moravian College scholarships of $5,000 annually, athletic training room supplies each year of $5,000, and a sports medicine injury claims management system, which will be an approximate $35,000 annual savings to the district. Throughout this process, St. Luke's has demonstrated that they're really looking to become a community partner and not just an athletic trainer. Throughout the discussions, they've been very forward with, presenting these are the things that we could do from an athletic perspective. They've also presented that they would be willing, to work from an educational perspective to give our students different educational opportunities within the medical field. They're really looking to become a true community partner. We also had some back and forth discussions with our current provider, Lehigh Valley Health Network. And when we looked at the plans side by side, St. Luke's really had the stronger proposal. And again, it would be $55,250 savings on an athletic training side, $6,000 on a district physician services side, and then also approximate $35,000 savings on our sports current insurance that we pay for our athletes.
That sounds like a win-win-win.
It is, and it almost sounded too good to be true, but they are doing similar situations with the numerous other school districts as they, build these additional hospitals in a county. They're really looking to become a community partner, and they're really working well with other school districts. They have these programs in place with other school districts, and the school districts seem very pleased with what, with all of the services that they're getting.
Okay, good.
JJ, can you go to the real estate tax collection timeline? Okay, as some of you may or may not be aware of, there's a lot of discussion at the state level in regards to extending the due dates for property tax collections. While no decision at Harrisburg has been made yet, there's still a lot of movement on a daily basis in Harrisburg in regards to wanting to extend the due dates of property taxes. And I just want to, give everybody the timeline of what our normal tax collection timeline would be. Normally it's a payment with discount before September 30th, the base tax on or before November 30th, and penalty after December 1st. We also provide for installment payments in September, October, and November payments being due. If the state or us as a district decide to extend the real estate tax due dates, the district would experience a significant cash flow challenge in that the real estate taxes, they come in the beginning of the year, where subsidies don't really start coming in till later in the year. So that's how all districts across the state manage their cash flow, because the state money doesn't really come in as consistently as we need it to be. So the real estate tax dollars are what kind of equalize that out. And unfortunately, the state does not fund schools at an appropriate level, and taxpayers have to, continue to help fund us. If the due dates would get pushed out, again, we would have a significant cash flow challenge in meeting our expenditures. There is a potential solution of a short-term tax revenue anticipation note. If the due dates are extended, that's something that the district may need. If we get into a point where the board decides to extend due dates, or the state forces the board to extend due dates, then we will be looking at a potential tax revenue anticipation note or a TRAN, if that becomes necessary. The TRAN would be a very short-term note. It would be due in the same fiscal year that it is borrowed. So as your tax revenues come in, you would repay that note. So at the end of the fiscal year, that note has been paid off. Trans can be structured to pay it off early with no penalty. And ideally, if our cash flow would support that, that's what we would aim to do. But I just wanted to bring it to the board's attention that there is, talk in Harrisburg of extending the timeline. As a board, the board may be thinking about extending the timeline. I just wanted to inform you guys that while it would present a cash flow challenge, there's an option that might help us mitigate that challenge. The last item on the agenda is the state budget
Can you guys
update.
hear me at all or not? I have my hand
The
raised.
state budget right now, as of now, Governor Wolf's proposed budget has not been changed. He is still going with the budget that he proposed back in February. But with the coronavirus impact, we are hearing from legislature and school business groups across the state that the revenue projections that the state is relying upon to meet their budgetary needs are also not meeting targets for the state level. So there is some concern that while there was a little bit of additional money in the state budget for education, that money will go away. Right now, there's also CARES Act money, which is federal money. There's a concern that the state will take the CARES Act money, to supplant what they were originally planning to fund. So it won't be additional money for the district. HASBO, the State Association of School Business Officials, who works closely in Harrisburg on a daily basis, they have indicated to all business managers across the state that they should not count on the CARES Act funds coming through to the schools in 2021. They said if it does come through, they are almost certain that it will be supplanting basic ed funding. So while the Lehighton area school district's estimated share of CARES funding is $474,000, they are saying do not count on that being additional money. It will help offset what the state intends to fund on basic ed funding. In the governor's budget, we have in his proposed budget, special ed proposed funding of $1,694,119, basic ed of $9,460,187, and the Ready to Learn grant of $374,159. It remains to be seen whether or not the state will appropriately pass that budget or if there will be pushback at the legislative level as the revenue estimates are not hitting the targets that the state needs.
How do those funding numbers compare to previous year's numbers?
In 1920, we are slated to get the same $374,159 in Ready to Learn grant, basic ed funding $9,290,651, and then special ed was roughly the same.
Okay.
So there will be ever moving targets as it relates to, state revenue that develop every single day at Harrisburg. But should the real estate tax collection due dates be extended, we'll definitely need to do something in that regard in regards to our cash flow challenges. As the state budget further updates, we will immediately notify the board of those revenue targets, whether they go hopefully in a positive way up. But from what everybody's saying across the state, it looks like these revenue estimates that the governor has in his budget may go down for every district.
When does the state have to pass their budget by?
They have to pass their budget by June 30th. There has been years that hasn't happened. There's also been some discussion that the state itself may pass just a 6-month budget, yet schools will still be required to pass their annual budget. So the state is currently talking that they may pass a 6-month budget and then pass another 6-month budget in December.
Okay.
Once they get a better idea of their, their revenue targets. But that has not been officially agreed upon yet.
Okay. And obviously all of that makes it even more difficult for us to hit the targets with the budget that we need to create and pass.
Correct.
At the same time.
It makes it a very challenging budget situation for sure. As far as the St. Luke's proposal, we would ask the Finance Committee that we move the St. Luke's proposal to the board agenda for approval. We would share the St. Luke's proposed contract with the entire board in their board packet prior to that approval.
Okay, that sounds good. I wanted to ask also on the real estate collection timeline. I know I've heard some concern about, obviously people's ability to pay in timely fashion. In the event that decision isn't made by the state, is that something that we would have to make as a blanket decision for our entire taxpayer base, or is that something where exceptions could be offered on a case-by-case basis on request?
You could do either one. As a district, you could decide to extend your due dates. When you pass the budget, that's when you determine your due dates as well. You could certainly do that district wide, or if you wanted to, establish a scenario whereby people could file for exceptions, you could do that as well. That can be a local decision.
Okay. So my thoughts are, if I'm just told that I don't have to pay, that I don't have to pay a bill until December 30th, I would be likely to pay it, by December 30th. If I had to go through an approval process, it would be there if I needed it for some reason, but otherwise I'd be likely to pay it at the normal time. So that might also affect or impact when cash is coming into the district.
And this is something that, the board can take time to think about. We can, make that decision, in May or June,
right,
if the state doesn't, make that decision for us.
Okay.
Patty, this is Rita. I'm assuming that you want to take all of this to the meeting on the 18th.
I would want to take the St. Luke's agreement to the 18th.
I don't have any further questions on anything. I'm in agreement with taking that St. Luke's agreement to the board. I think that's a great proposal from them.
Rita, do you have any more questions or comments before I go to the people and the attendees that have raised their
Not at this time, no. I just hope that we can keep the comments to what they're supposed to be, which is several minutes. Thank you.
At this time, I have Mr. David Bradley is requested, and I also have Gloria Bowman as well. Okay, Mr. Bradley?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Mr. Bradley, are you?
Can you hear me okay? It shows that I'm set up. How about now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Excellent.
Yes, Jim.
Okay. So I have several questions. Let's start with the very beginning. That I sent in a list of questions. When will they be addressed? Do you have them?
I did not. I was on the.
Okay, so the first question is, who's running the meeting? You, Jonathan?
Yes, Mr. Bradley, I'm.
You're the host. Okay. And we have board members Nathan and board members Rita on the committee, and they're in attendance, correct?
That is correct.
Excellent. So the first question I have, and you guys jumped ahead, I had my hand raised for many of these agenda items. This is a open meeting, correct? A Sunshine Act meeting?
This is a committee meeting, yes.
Yeah, okay. And an official action of this committee would be a recommendation by the agency to the board, correct? You took official action already? You decided that you wanted to recommend something to the board? Is that correct? Is that what I heard? You did that action? You're going to bring the St. Luke's thing to the board?
That was discussed during this meeting, yes.
Okay, so prior to that recommendation, Sunshine Act requires that you allow the public to speak prior to them making that decision. Why did that not occur?
Again, Mr. Bradley, this is a committee meeting.
I understand.
There's no official action.
Actually, there's an official action. A recommendation made by an agency is defined as an official action. That was the action. And prior to any official action by any committee or subcommittee that makes a recommendation to a board is required to allow public comment prior to the action. And they shall provide a reasonable opportunity. I had my hand raised, it didn't do it. But let's just move on, since you guys seem to not understand that part of the Sunshine Act. So the first question I have is the draft audits that was mentioned. Was the board provided a copy of this, or was any member of the board provided a copy of the draft audit?
Mr. Bradley, as I stated, the audit firm has not allowed the district to release it. They are currently in their peer review process of finalizing and signing off on everything. Once that is done, they will present it to the entire board, and the entire board will receive a full copy of the audit.
Okay, so you're saying that the superintendent has a copy? The business office has a copy? Who has the copy currently of this draft? Anybody in our office?
Mr. Bradley, I received a copy of the draft to review. The draft was also shared with the state auditors.
Excellent. So as an employee of the district, under our annual financial review, on about the fourth page, there's an organizational chart. And in that organizational chart, it identifies the school board, under which it shows the solicitor, the superintendent, and all the related employees. So why would a subordinate business manager take a draft copy of an audit report and not provide it at its earliest opportunity to the board so we could have it reviewed?
Because it is in draft form, that means the auditors have not finalized what they wish to present. When they take it out of draft form, it will be shared with you.
But prior to that, the draft form was provided to their customer. Their customer is this board. We should have a copy of that. I think that this committee should recommend that the draft copy of this audit be released immediately to the board for their review. It just makes common sense. Why would the customer not see the draft copy if the client provided the draft copy to the customer? Why are you hiding it or holding it from your board?
We are not hiding it.
Okay, then give it to the board.
The audit correlates directly to the annual financial report that has been posted on the website. At the request of the audit firm, which is standard practice within the accounting industry, a document marked draft is not pushed out publicly until it is finalized. Draft means draft.
I understand, but we're not the public. A board member is a duly elected official. Mr. Bradley,
you are a citizen of the state of Pennsylvania. You are the public. We are all a part of the public.
Then why do you have a copy
and this board does not? There's not special rules for you.
Why does this board not have a copy of this? Because you decided?
Mr. Bradley, I just explained to you.
But did you decide this?
I did not decide this. This is standard procedure in an audit engagement, and that is all the more I am saying about this.
Now, you have a copy, Ms. Denicola, yet your board does not. That is wrong. You work for the board. The copy was provided to the
Mr. Bradley,
government.
I explained to you why it was not released. It is in
Nathan,
draft
can you please correct this person?
As soon as it is out of draft form, you will be
Nathan,
along with all the other board members, the first to receive it.
I appreciate that, Ms. Denicola. Your opinions are duly noted. Nathan, can you please educate and instruct your subordinate employee as to the release of this copy that came to the district from our client, our customer, the person that they work for us, this auditor, to give the released draft copy to every member of this board? Can you please do
Mr.
that for
Bradley,
me,
your
sir?
opinions are duly noted, but I feel that the audit report will be and should be shared with us when it is finalized. Ms. Denicola has access to that because she is the one working with the auditors, and I believe it's being handled appropriately.
Okay.
I do look forward to seeing it, but when it's finalized.
Yeah, I find you to be completely rubber stamping and leaving a blind trust to your subordinate employee, not taking the responsibility. But like you said, it's my opinion. We'll see how it goes from there. Okay, on this AFR inside the district's website, it shows that we are $1.7 million, like you mentioned, under budget. And actually $3.4 million under budget, but $700,000 from the sale of the buildings to cover the operating expenses, whereas that should have went to the debt directly. And then $1 million from PlanCon, leaving us still $1.7 million in arrears. So the question is simple. How does the administration spend more than was allocated on a budget item without the board's previous approval to said overconsumption?
Mr. Bradley, as I have been discussing since I started at the district back in March, a little over a year ago, I was one of the first to say that the board was overspending, and I shared mountains of information as to, over this last year, where that overspending was occurring.
I completely agree. The board is overspending. I completely agree. The administration cannot spend a single penny without the board's approval. Therefore, this majority board has been immorally consuming monies that they do not have available to them. And it seems as though that has not been corrected. Okay, I noticed that you have...
I would beg to differ in that when I started back in March, I recreated a budget for 2019-20. I took the historical numbers, the historical actual expending, and I created a budget based upon what the district had been spending. Throughout the process, throughout this past year, I have been taking things out to bid, cutting costs where we can, questioning expenditures. We are now spending within budget. However, the revenue sources available to us are not enough to meet the contractual obligations, the instructional obligations, the special education obligations. I have been delivering this same message at almost every finance committee meeting this entire year. This is not new information. This is the same information I've been repeating every time we talk about finance.
We agree, Ms. Denicola, we completely agree. The board is fully responsible for all of the consumption within the district. You cannot spend a single penny without board approval. We fully recognize that. So let's move on to the next thing that you mentioned, which was you called the cash flow loss or change significant related to real estate tax collection and its timeline. What do you consider to be significant when you use the word significant? How much cash flow change would it occur to extend the bill due date to December 31st and remove any penalty to be paid by that date? I calculated it out to be less than $400,000. Is that considered significant to you or not?
With all due respect, you don't understand school finance at the level that you feel you do. The pushing off the tax collections would put us into a negative cash flow situation in certain months that we don't have appropriate state revenue coming in. There is an entire process to figuring out how much you'd be eligible for under a TRAN. We are starting to do that should that become necessary.
So let's go down the path. I differ from your opinion. However, I'm going to ask the question. You said it was significant. What number do you feel was significant? It's a number. I deal in facts, not
Mr. Bradley,
arbitrary.
I have told you it's significant. Significant I'm going to give you my definition of significant. We will not have cash flow to pay our bills. End of discussion.
Well, it's not the end of the discussion. That's a good point. So how much money is it? You obviously did the math to come up with the decision that it was significant and use that adjective. I'm looking for the number. Did you calculate the number? As our business manager, did you calculate the number and provide that information to your finance committee or board, or any member of the board?
Mr. Bradley, the event of the tax collections being pushed out has not yet occurred. So I am not going to tie myself to an individual number to an event that has not yet occurred. Have I done research into how much we've collected over the months versus how much our expenditures are? And if we lose that, what it would be? It would be significant. That's my final response to you on this map.
I understand, but okay, I'll talk to Nathan since you have, kind of shut down the communication train. Hey, Nathan, we collect a certain number of dollars from our local taxpayers. Those dollars are in the area of the mid-20s millions of dollars, 22, 24. If we look at our physical AFR for last year, we can actually pull up the actual number. Given that many people pay their taxes in advance to get advantage of that discount, and some of them pay late and have to pay a penalty. Worst case scenario, we're looking at a couple $100,000. And the best case scenario is we're looking at saving our taxpayers a cash flow crunch that they're going to have, which is as significant. Because if they lose their home over this, if they're losing their home over this,
I can interrupt.
you don't need to interrupt. Let me just finish my statement because this is a sunshine meeting. We're there to talk to our board. So those numbers should be calculated out and analyzed. And the whole reason when we had this conversation to our board meeting was to come to this committee meeting and review those numbers. As a managerial team, you can't use arbitrary terms like the word significant without actually having a dollar attached to it. You're a businessman. You should know that. Go ahead. You speak and I'll listen to what you think.
So you're using arbitrary terms like a couple $100,000. You're estimating that 1% of people would take advantage of the opportunity to pay later if we give them that opportunity. Where does that number come from?
Actually, I went with 100% of the people would take the opportunity.
You just said a couple $100,000. That's
yes, sir. So
of our tax revenue.
If 100% of the people don't take the discount, and 100% of the people don't pay their bills until December 31st, and 100% of those pay on time on December 31st, you're talking about a cash flow change to the district of less than a maximum of $400,000. And you're looking at something number less than that. Those exact numbers would be missing, however, from a board member. However, they are within our walls at Lehighton at 1000 Union Road, right, at the boulevard, inside the administration building. We have these data. We have this information. We can make an educated decision. If we take the lead and direct our subordinate employees that work at the district for the benefit of the stakeholders to say, calculate this number for me. I'm looking at 100% of the taxpayers not paying their bill till December. What will be the financial impact on revenue? And what will be the timeline associated with cash flow needs to meet that obligation? Those are two key metrics that should be identified by our business manager, and those numbers, not the emotional, significant feelings by our business manager, but physical numbers by an employee that's there to calculate numbers for our benefit so we can make educated decisions. That's how this is supposed to work. That's the committee meeting. That's why the public has access to the Sunshine Act, so they can bring an item to the table for your execution. And you're supposed to do that. And if you do look at the Sunshine Act, your recommendation is an official action and therefore requires public input. And when the board said, go to this finance committee meeting and find out those numbers to see what the impact was, it's irresponsible of you and Rita to accept an answer of significant, whereas the answer was, we want to know what the impact is. Larry said, not the word significant. He wanted to know what the impact was. You can't answer that question. So somewhere between that board meeting and this finance committee meeting, our subordinate employees did not do their job, either because they were not asked to do this job or they were let to not do this job. I'm questioning you as a board member. Which one was it? Did you not ask for this information, or are you trying to accept this significant as an acceptable answer? Because we're going to have a board meeting soon, and this is going to come to a head.
I actually thought you were answering my question there. I'm sorry if I misunderstood that.
No, I'm asking you a question. The question is,
significant to me. No, significant to me seems just as accurate as the number of a couple $100,000 that you just threw out that all of a sudden in your answer turned to $400,000. It's pointless to continue this.
No, it's not. It's not pointless, Nathan. Come on, use your brain here. Big brain time. You're going to have to look at this. The reality is the most it can be is 400. I think that if we did the math on who paid and when, but you should have real data. I obviously do not have that real data. That's held within our walls. I cannot get it because they've been obstructing this information from proper board of directors that want to act with fidelity, and we want to know these answers. We want to know how many of the 20-some million dollars that was collected was paid in advance of the penalty, was paid on time, or took the discount. And from there, you can interpolate very quickly what the penalty change would be. And worst case scenario, it's 400. So realistically, we are talking less than 1% of the total budget to help all of these stakeholders. We can have a less than 1% change in our budget, and we can help all the stakeholders.
So your 400,000 is how much the penalty amount would be?
No, sir. That's the worst case scenario if you adopt this policy.
Of the penalty amount.
No, sir. No, sir. Please.
Maybe you
don't understand how school finances work. You should talk to Patty, get educated, and understand how it works. Worst case scenario, this proposal should cost the district in cash flow, worst case scenario, $400,000.
Mr. Bradley, this is Rita. I'm just curious, if no one pays their taxes till the end of December, that means the district has no money at all coming in until the end of December. So it has no money to start the school year. And the discount period, people pay their taxes. It certainly seems to me that amounts to more than $400,000. So I'm fairly certain that your whole little argument here is, if no one pays anything till the end of December, what do we run on from September to December?
So the first question, Rita, and great questions, but the first question you have to ask is, what's the change to the revenue associated with the district over a longer period of time, right? So the first question is, how much will it change our revenue? And we both hopefully agree that that number is insignificant and literally a couple $100,000, if at all, that they take advantage of this opportunity. So the second scenario is the cash flow issue. And that's a function of how much do we have in reserve, where is our reserves, and how do we meet those needs? The second part of that question on cash flow is how do we consume our dollars with the district? Currently, I'm under the impression that we're not even taking kindergarten registration. So that's another piece to that puzzle. If we do not act as managerial supervision to our administration, our subordinate administration, and collect these metrics and data, you're playing in the blind and you're giving a blind trust and you are rubber stamping just blindly, not even knowing, and you're just going to accept whatever you're given, and then you're going to rub your rubber stamp on it again, Rita. It's completely immoral.
Is there any, we have other participants, Ms. Gloria Bowman.
Well, hold on. You didn't answer my question, sir. You didn't answer my question.
Mr. Bradley, we have gone over this.
You have not answered my question, sir. You have not answered my question. You cannot just hide from the question and then say, move on.
We are giving the other individuals an opportunity. Does no one has answered your question?
Wait a second. Mr. Cleaver, during this entire meeting, you had no time. My hand was raised many times for each of the areas of this annual report.
We are letting individuals
come back
speak.
to it? Are
And
you
to
gonna
be
come
fair,
back?
we are going to continue.
You gonna
We are
come back
going
or
on
not?
we are going on to Miss
I know,
Gloria.
but then are you going to come back to the other areas of subject matter, including St. Luke's?
Miss Bowman, are you able to hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Patty, under the St. Luke's proposal, I did not see, is that for just 1 year, or was that a 3-year proposal, or
We are looking for a 10-year proposal.
10 years? Okay. And then there will be no changes to that with that?
No changes throughout.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're
The 1920 budget, what is that looking like for us? You know, I know what the 18-19 looked like. You described that very well, and I know the costs. But how are we looking to close out for the 1920 school year? And I know we had that 0.5 mil increase last year, and I was hoping that would offset some of this. And I was wondering how that might be looking for this upcoming end of the budget for June 30th for us.
Our current year to date, our total budgeted revenue for 1920 is $41,361,426. Our
Okay.
total year to date revenue collections are $35,384,779. So roughly 88% collected. What we don't know is from a state and a local revenue perspective, how much the pandemic might change our last quarterly receipts.
Oh, okay.
From an expenditure standpoint, we budgeted $43,895,493. Year to date, we're at $34,017,367, so roughly 78%. Again, with expenditures, even though schools were closed, schools are still teaching students, so therefore
Correct.
we are still paying teachers under Act 13 of 2020. Requires us to pay all employees, and all of our employees have continued to work throughout the pandemic. So from a savings perspective, due to the pandemic, we will see some utility savings because we've shut down buildings as we can, shut down systems, but it's not going to be the tremendous amount of savings that people would expect due to a school, all school buildings being closed.
Okay, are we talking at all about a tax increase for 2021 with the community?
The board has not made those decisions yet.
Any discussion about that yet? Okay. Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
Barb
Mr. Kleber.
Bose.
Oops.
Miss Bose, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. Is it customary to pay the auditors prior to receiving the end product?
You pay as they're doing work. We are holding back a bulk of their what their contractual charges were until we get that final audit.
Okay, because in the check register from the meeting last month, it showed them being paid $35,000 and something dollars. And that was approved by the board.
Yes, that was approved, but we told them because we thought we would have the final audit by that, by the board meeting date. We did
Right.
not.
Okay.
So we held back. I'd have to check the records. We did not release the full 35,000. We released a portion of that payment to them.
Okay. Next question is, was that just for the yearly audit, or did any of those funds include the forensic audit?
That was just for the audit. Throughout their audit, they audited, all the books and records. That was for the financial statement audit.
Okay. Now, we collect, when I did the math on what the district would lose, and I understand the cash flow issue, okay? I understand if you don't have money coming in, that's part of the problem. Putting that aside, when I ran the numbers, approximate numbers of what we collect locally in taxes of $20 million, 2% of that comes to just about $400,000. What we don't know, because we don't have that information, is how many people pay late and pay the 10% penalty. That number would be needed to be included to know what the actual loss in monies would be, you know, on a historical basis, because you don't know. And it's probably going to be worse this year with people being out of work. It's going to take them easily a few months to try to catch up if they can. But that number was $400,000. If 100% of the people paid at the 2% discount, the loss would be $200,000. Like I said, without knowing how many people paid late and paid late fees. Now, what you had said was that should the district decide to extend either the late fee, the 2% discounted period, or should they decide to not collect the 10% penalty and just do what the county did and extend the flat tax until December 31st. And I just lost my train of thought, sorry. We would need to borrow a short-term loan, basically, is what you're saying, to cover the cash flow for that time.
Correct.
You would need to have a number of what you were going to borrow.
We will finalize that number should the event occur that we need to do that.
Well, wouldn't it be prudent to take a look at that and have that information available for the board and, of course, you know, for the people, the community, so we know what we're looking at? I mean, I would.
And again, Barb, this information was shared because this is all new and developing. This is saying this is what could occur. Obviously, we will be, you know, working through the numbers should that event happen. But this is all of this epidemic stuff is happening so quickly that I wanted to get information out to the board and to the community as to if that happens, this is what the district may need to do. Because a significant portion of our cash collections during the months of July through September and October are our real estate tax collections.
Right, and I understand that.
And this is all happening so quickly. This meeting was just to alert that yes, we can change the due dates if we want to, or the state may require us to do that. In the event that happens, we may need to initiate a TRAN to solve our cash flow needs. If it becomes more readily apparent that a TRAN is going to be needed, you can guarantee that numbers will be available for everyone to review.
Okay, I'm basically what I'm asking is, wouldn't it be better to be proactive instead of reactive?
Agreed, Barb, and that those calculations are currently happening. They're not finalized yet.
Okay.
We're getting more information on a daily basis.
I guess what I'm looking for is, should this occur, this is what we need to do, and should this occur, and then that way all the numbers are already out there, so when the decision needs to be made, because you also have to discuss the budget and come up with a budget. And
Correct.
actually,
and we will
and
be
that has to be passed. So, and it's
yes,
it can be a lot to do in a short amount of time.
we know what's ahead of us, and we are prepared for that.
Okay, that was just my thoughts, and you know, to be proactive instead of reactive.
Thank you. I have Mr. Stern. Mr. Stern, can you hear us?
I can. Thank you, Mr. Cleaver. First of all, thanks for trying to keep the meeting moving and trying to keep points to being valid points and not rhetorical, continued rhetorical information. I want to just address Nathan's idea, which I believe has some merit to it, with having the process of an application for exception for the scheduling. As we know, many people are affected by this situation, but there are many people who aren't affected by this situation. A lot are still working, a lot are working more than they wanted to. And if we could do some things where the folks who need relief can get some relief, but the folks who aren't affected by it run the normal schedules, I think that's a viable solution. So I'm going to commend Nathan on that. Number two, and it stems to, we don't know what the state's going to do, whether they're going to force us to do that, whether extend dates or not, or change dates. And this address, I guess, to the business administration is the dates that we have to know by before our bills, the tax bills are printed, sent with schedules on them and all that type of stuff, Patty? How would
Correct.
that work?
So ideally, we notify them in June, and then once we pass the final budget, we give them the go-ahead to print. So we have everything set up. We sign off on the numbers throughout the process of we send them the file, and throughout June, there's a lot of back and forth tweaking things to make sure it's right. We sign off on the numbers, making sure that they build the appropriate amounts. And then the minute we pass the budget, we send them an email and tell them to go to print. So it happens pretty quickly, as quick as their production can get it done, that the bills would get done. And that's pretty standard when as school districts pass their budgets, they kind of get everything loaded, the taxpayer information loaded, the assessment information loaded, and then they just wait to put the tax rate in, and then they go and they print the bills.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm glad you addressed the information for Act 13. The board had no control over who gets paid during this pandemic from a Pennsylvania Department of Education and a state government perspective. That law was passed in order to keep the teaching staffs and those things solvent. Part of the caveat of that was in the bill, it said all employees will be paid as if they were on roll as of March 20th or whatever it was. All employees to that impact meant professional, non-professional, support, and actually even part-time, coaching, stipends, the whole thing. So I don't think the state had a full grasp of what they were passing when they passed that act, but we're feeling the impact of that as well. So I'm glad you brought up that particular Act 13 comment. So thank you very much. And that ends my comments. Mr. Cleaver, I'm finished. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Mr. Cleaver, I still have some information.
At this point,
Mr. Cleaver, I still have my hand raised.
Two individuals have raised their hand that I already had a chance to speak. I will, again, if we could limit your comments, please, to amount of a lot of time. We will give everyone an opportunity. But again, these two individuals have had an opportunity to already speak. Ms. Bowles, were you requesting again?
Yes, I just wanted to mention last year the 2% discount was extended because of the bills being printed late.
Oh, thank you.
Yes, we did that last year when the bill printing was delayed.
Right. And now how did that affect our cash? Well, not necessarily our cash flow, but our revenue. Was it significant or not?
It was not significant because the bills got out in were sent out. We gave people just that extended period of time, but most of them paid as they as they had in the past. I think the challenge today is we don't know how the pandemic has affected our community truly yet.
Right, but what I'm saying is, I believe if I remember correctly, it was extended out an extra month. Because
I'd have to go back and check that, but that sounds accurate.
but it might be while you're discussing what you're going to do with the due dates, even giving them an extra month, if it did not significantly impact our revenues, that might be something to give back to the community. I'm working more than I wanted to, but there's a lot of people who aren't working. And it's sad because we live in a community with a high percentage of people in poverty. So it was just a thought, since we extended it last year due to the late printing of the tax bills, you might want to consider that when you're considering what you're going to do with the due dates. And that's all I have. Thank you.
I do believe, okay, we have one more. Mr. Bradley, again, he did have an option to speak, I believe.
Yep, so what I'm looking for on this one is on the St. Luke's proposal, how many years do we still have left on the contract from Lehigh Valley?
Under Lehigh Valley, there's 1 year left, but there's no penalty for terminating early.
Okay. And was there any changes to the Lehigh Valley proposal during the negotiation of this new proposal, or did you not negotiate with Lehigh Valley?
We had discussions with Lehigh Valley as well. St. Luke's proposal just provided greater savings and also greater supports to the district.
Okay, so who did this negotiation? Did the board or did someone else do this?
We didn't negotiate. We had discussions and they submitted proposals to the administration, Mr. Bradley.
Well, they're spending tens of thousands of dollars. Hold on, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars. There's a negotiation that takes place. There's a proposal from more than one vendor. Who reviewed it from the board? Anybody during this process?
Again, Mr. Bradley, this review proposals was presented to us. The recommendation from administration has gone to the finance committee to recommend we move forward with St. Luke's.
So who's us, Mr. Cleaver? You're using pronouns without the...
Myself, Mr. Spots, and Ms. Denicola.
Okay, so you three people met with these two vendors, put a proposal together, and then as bringing it to the financial committee for review.
They put the proposal together. We did not.
Each of those vendors put a proposal together to those three members to Spots, Cleaver, and Denicola, to which you guys are bringing it to the financial committee meeting, and then the finance meeting, who had no contact with any of these people, is now trying to make a recommendation to the board without public input prior to their recommendation. That's what I'm seeing. Am I missing something there?
No, that's your opinion. I see a recommendation from administration sent to the finance committee, and now the individuals are commenting about it right now, so that would be input from the public.
Yeah, but prior to their recommendation is the question. They got to be prior to their action for the Sunshine Act. Okay, the other thing you have is it says we are prepared. When Patty uses the term we are prepared on this budget and on these things, is she talking that administration is prepared, or is she talking that somehow our finance committee is preparing this, or is our treasurer looking at this? You use the word we.
We are prepared to present budget information to the board in a timely fashion so they can review it and make decisions as related to what they would like to pass as part of their budget.
Okay, and you have cash equivalents currently at the end of last year is $4.9 million. That's being consumed at breakneck paces. What is the plan for this finance committee to deal with the budget shortfalls that are going to land on these people suffering from lack of work?
I think that was part of the discussion. We just had a possibility of doing some of the things we talked about to help with cash flow, depending on what way the board or the state directs us to go.
What changes in expenditures is going to take place to balance this budget so that this board can be a moral representation of government inside of the community? Because currently in my opinion, it's very immoral when it passed a budget that exceeds its revenues. That question is for Mr. Foeller and Director Spinelli, not their subordinates. Mr. Foeller and Ms. Spinelli, what are you doing about a budget where you recommended and passed that exceeds the revenue for your district, your government?
Any other comments?
How about a response? Mr. Foeller or Ms. Spinelli? What are you doing to rectify the budget that is projected to expend more money than the revenues that are coming in? That's immoral. What are you guys going to do? Come on, Nathan, you're a businessman. Rita, step up. You're not just going to rubber stamp whatever your subordinates tell you to do, right? I mean, they're benefiting from the consumption, right? Larry just said that every employee gets paid. His wife gets paid, the employees get paid, the part-timers get paid.
Any other comments? Again.
No, I'm asking a question of my board. Please do not truncate that, Mr. Cleaver. That's not your
Mr. Bradley,
responsibility as host. It's
we
their
have
job to
gone
answer.
over this every time. The comments about individuals are fit. You don't have to go there. And at this point,
I did. I do
there are
have
no
to go there
comments.
because it has to be said. You have part-timers getting paid. You have people not
Mr.
working
Bradley,
getting paid.
that was a state
That is the
decision.
state.
It was
How
not
do you
made
pay a
at the local
part-timer?
decision.
So how did you decide how many hours to pay them?
They're
The
contract
the
amounts.
state dictated how much to pay. That was a
Individual
state
part-timer,
decision.
hourly employees?
Yes, that is correct, Mr. Bradley.
So you just went on an average over a 6-month period? What'd you use? What algorithm?
They
did you
have,
use?
our part-time employees have a rate that they work. They have an hourly rate that they work. They have amount of hours they work on a day, and that is how that was directed.
Okay,
No
was that
more or
presented
no
to your
less.
board?
No more or no less.
Was
Everyone
that
is being-
presented to your board, sir?
Mr.
And
Bradley, the
Mr.
state
Foeller, I'm
requires.
asking Mr. Foeller. I don't want to ask you. You have truncated me. You have muted me. I'm asking Mr. Foeller. Do not step on him. He's the director. Thank you. Mr. Foeller, did you get a list of who was being paid and how during this period? Nathan, were you aware of what's
I
taking
didn't ask
place
for
within
a
our
list
district?
of who is being paid and how.
You are?
I know that our administration is paying our staff in accordance with the state requirements that are placed on them.
How do you know that? What have you been given? What document were you given?
Your questions become more and more absurd.
No, it's not. It's a blind trust. Did you get a report? Did you get anything? What'd you get? Because I didn't see anything. I'm a director.
How do you know every month they pay our employees like they're supposed
One
to?
more time. That's right. Our goal, our responsibility, according to the org chart, is to hold these people accountable for what's being done. It's a blind trust. If you're
So
not
you've never
even
done
looking
that
at
before, but now I was apparently supposed to. I'm done tonight, Mr. Bradley.
you're done with what? Doing your job?
have any
Your
other-
fidelity?
Do we have any other comments? Mr. Bradley we will give, Ms. Bowman has requested, and since we gave Ms. Bowes and Ms. Bradley an opportunity to, respond again, we will also allow Ms. Bowman.
You're required to take from anybody
Bowman?
entire.
Yeah, thank you. Just to follow up with the law and that these employees need to be paid. I believe the board meeting just occurred and you paid your staff as well as their benefits as per the law. So that is where you have the accountability from your last board meeting when all of that was approved. Thank you.
Any other, at this point, individuals have had the opportunity more than once to comment on individual items. Is there any other discussion from the panelists?
No, I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Sorry,
Second
Rita,
it.
you have to let the people speak.
All right, well, thank everyone for
Rita, you
tuning
have
in
to let the
today. And
people
again,
speak.
thank you for
Wait, you can't
bearing
truncate
with
the
us
meeting
as
without
we
letting the people
kind of
speak.
navigate through this
Hold on,
new
you have to let the people
process
speak.
for our committee meetings. Thank everyone, and please have a safe evening.